That Davis show, and lucky enough to have a long-term friend, I should mean to say, of Dean Davis and Now That Davis show. We have Eric Edholm, who covers the NFL draft for Yahoo Sports. This man knows his draft. All right. If every draft we must consult with Eric. All right. This is just the truth. All right. He must be consulted. All right. We must go to him and find out this information. So, and also make sure you follow him at Eric_Edholm. Eric, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing all right, man. I'm not only a friend, I'm a fan. You can say that. It's verified.
Back at you.
So.
Back at you, man. Definitely. So listen, we had football Christmas. Finally here in Chicago, we actually got to experience it with the first round pick. There's nothing worse than not having a first round pick, except if you get Justin Fields. Next year, not having a pick. So I want to know, first off, with Justin Fields, the Bears' #1 pick, what were your pros, what were your cons, and where did you have him rate compared to the other quarterbacks that went in the first round?
Yeah, and you mentioned the Christmas aspect of it. I quick story. I went out for some errands Friday morning after the first round, the day after. I hadn't seen a Bears jersey around. Granted, I'm out in the sticks a little bit, but I hadn't seen people wearing Bears jerseys out and about, out in the wild, since like mid-November. And here I see 4 people, just sort of milling around town wearing their vintage Bears jersey. People are fired up, and I think for good reason. Fields to me was my number 2 quarterback overall behind Trevor Lawrence, and I just feel like, even though there were some alarming games, Northwestern comes to mind, certainly Indiana game. Yep. Even I thought Alabama and Michigan State games had some moments where you said, this isn't ideal, but other than speeding up his timing and processing a tick, and other than sort of preventing those moments where he tries to play hero ball and tries to do a little bit too much. That was like the Indiana game, especially. He's got a strong arm. It's the same mechanics every time along. You see him throw, very consistent mechanics. You can tell he's been well coached. He's taken to the coaching. He's improved leaps and bounds as a passer since when he was at Georgia. And oh, by the way, he's got that athletic ability and a really tough kid. I mean, there weren't too many big questions. Obviously, the epilepsy thing came up. Mm-hmm. Talked to some people who said our team doctor signed off on it. It's not an issue that anyone's really worried about. I don't think the Bears are. And I think he's got the mental capacity to handle a complex NFL playbook. So there's a lot to like. Is he going to be the savior? Who knows? But this sure feels a lot different. I don't know about you, but I mean, a lot different than draft night 2017. What a difference.
Oh, it's sad in a way that it feels like this, because for such a historic franchise, you would think we would have other days that it felt so good, and we really haven't, and that's sad to say. Let me ask you this: you mentioned that he needs to speed it up a little bit. How easy is that for a quarterback coming from college to start to learn those traits and know how to start speeding up his delivery?
Yeah, it's a tough ask because everything else is going faster around you, right? I mean, the speed of the NFL defensive backs. Certainly their knowledge is going to be a lot greater. They're going to do more complex things. So it's, this is something where I think he has enough arm strength where he can kind of get away with it most of the time. And he did in college. But there was times where you just sort of felt like if he could have anticipated or, just sped up his process a little bit more, as long as they're not retooling his passing mechanics and trying to, mess with his delivery and all that, I think he can do it. Some of it's going to be familiarity and just repetition and things like that. So, but it's a great question. I mean, there are NFL people out there who think that it's more of a mental aspect than a physical aspect. And some are leery whether a quarterback can actually improve on those things other than maybe marginally. So, we don't know the answer, but those are some thoughts I have on it.
Now, listen, the second round pick, Tevin Jenkins, now we know for sure. It seems like he's going to be a left tackle.
Yeah.
How did you have him graded out? Did you have him graded out as a right tackle? And do you think he could be a left tackle? And how quickly do you think he can assimilate to that side of the ball? I mean, that side of the line.
Yeah, no, I mean, he played there, I think, at least one game every single season, or at least the last couple of years where, if they had to move someone over, they moved him to the left tackle spot, put him back at right naturally. So he's played there. He's taken reps. I'd have to go look at exactly how many it is. But, there were certainly times last year or even 2 seasons ago where you saw the left tackle tape. some offenses are going to be more geared towards protecting the front side and so I mean, some of that stuff, the footwork, it's going to be a little backward, and but for him, having done it recently, I'm not too worried about it as long as they don't leave him out on an island. And I'll be curious to see where Larry Borom ends up too. But he's such a fun player to watch. There was an issue early in his career about his assertiveness. Like he would, they felt like he kind of held back a little bit, and Mike Gundy challenged him. I mean, he went up to him in the weight room and said, there's one guy in this room worth $40 million, and it's you. And you want to reach that level, you got to be a grinder. You got to make sure this is your full-time commitment. And it seemed to light a fire on him. I thought he looked great last year. He's a pile driver in the run game. He's got that kind of nasty John Tate sort of element to him or whatever. Yeah. But I think he was a top 20 prospect for me. I didn't realize the hip injury was as big a concern with some other teams, which may have knocked him out of that first round.
Eric, if somebody tells me that I can get $40 million, it better light a fire under my butt. All right, to say the least.
You got problems, right? Yeah. Like $40 million,
maybe, Look,
we got issues if that doesn't change it, right?
You mentioned Larry Borom. What's the realistic chance that he can be a starting right tackle in the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, another guy who played multiple positions at Mizzou. I mean, he was a left tackle, a right tackle, a guard. I mean, he moved around. Whereas basically, from what I understand, they were trying to pick their best five. Who's our best five blockers, and let's figure out where they fit best. And he was, essentially the most flexible, or one of the more flexible of the Tigers linemen. So, that's kind of a nice little benefit. And he's a big kid who, his workout numbers may not pop off the page, but for that size, I felt like they were pretty darn strong. So it just sort of felt like I was talking to somebody who was on the Mizzou staff previously with him and saw him as he came in and said, it just sort of felt like he made a big jump at some point, like that he really kind of turned the corner a little bit and became this NFL prospect. So, is it a little bit of a stretch to say, okay, he can be your day one right tackle? Yeah, I would say, but we've seen crazier things. We've seen, I'm trying to think, there was a Michael Onwenu last year in New England. I mean, his tape at Michigan was good. I wouldn't say it was mind-blowing, but he was one of the best rookie offensive linemen last year in all of football. He was a 6th round pick. So it can happen. And it'll be fascinating to see if he gets that opportunity.
What grade will you give Pace for just the tackles?
Yeah, good question. If we take Fields out of the equation, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, they moved up for Jenkins, right? Had to give up a little capital. Did. Okay.
Yes,
and then, obviously there were other positions you could have said, okay, a corner, an edge, somebody else, but I had no problem with it because it felt like they needed multiple guys, and maybe there are more pure tackles out there than Larry Borom, but those two picks alone, I would say like a B+ or something, or a B. Yeah, I mean, I think pretty strong. The Fields pick made their grade for me. I mean, I hate to, come on, let's be honest here. But I like the two follow-up choices, and I like Dazz Newsome and a couple other choices too.
Talk to me about Dazz Newsome. What can the Bears expect? Will he just be a special team guy, or is this a guy that maybe can supplant Anthony Miller if he's still on the team in the slot?
Yeah, I mean, right. He's probably a slot. He's not a super big frame guy. He's about 5'10"-ish, 190. Yeah. So he sort of has a little bit of a thicker lower build, though. I mean, his weight surprised me a little. I thought he was maybe closer to 5'11", 200 or something like that. But you mentioned the punt returning ability. He's got some game breaking ability, but he caught almost 200 passes in college too, and was pretty darn productive. He was the leading receiver, I think, 2 years ago, and then second to De'Ami Brown last year. So, I would probably say that he's tough enough to handle the slot, quick enough. The one issue with him that kind of hurt his stock was the change of direction stuff. Like his pro day, I want to say his 3-cone drill was abysmal. And I don't have it off the top of my head, but it was, normally you like those slot guys to be under 7 seconds, and he was 7.3 or something like that. So that was a little alarming for that position. But yeah, I would say even though he's, a little bit of an undisciplined player at times, he's got some upside to him.
And Khalil Herbert, they took 217, the running back out of Virginia Tech. Can we expect for him to actually get on the field, or is this again somebody that can just be a kickoff guy for the most part?
Yeah, I mean, he really opened my eyes last year. Kansas transfer who came in and looked like the kind of guy that should have never been allowed to walk out of any building. I mean, he was pretty incredible, and I mean, here's somebody who averaged 8 yards a carry, has pretty good short, stout build, I would say. And, the receiving ability worries me a little bit. He wasn't asked to do it very much at either school, Virginia Tech or Kansas. So, is he a capable pass catcher? I don't know. That makes me wonder whether he can replace or, give them insurance for Tariq Cohen with his injury. So I don't know the answer to that. I think he's maybe more of a backup to David Montgomery, like as a first and second down guy, and you give him a couple touches here. But you're right. I mean, maybe the return ability gives him an opportunity. So, I mean, he's had some injuries, but boy, last season really did change the narrative completely for him. So it was a fun story. I mean, he really worked well behind Darisaw on a good offensive line, and felt like it was 6-7 yards before a defender got his hand on him. Yeah, it was crazy.
I like hearing that. That's what I want to hear. That's definitely what I want to hear.
I'm just buttering you up, man. This is what I do. So.
And then finally, the Bears went defense, and they got Thomas Graham Jr., cornerback. I know some of these guys. I know it's getting pie in the sky to expect all these guys to either make the team or to actually be someone that's really relevant when it comes to the team. But just to go off for all of them, what were your thoughts on Thomas Graham Jr.?
Yeah, I mean, obviously a need position. I thought maybe they'd go a little higher, for one. But value-wise, I sort of figured he'd be a third, fourth round guy, maybe early fifth. So that, they got him in a great spot, I think. And, just his play production when he did play, he opted out. Maybe am I saying that right? Yes, he opted out last year. Had to think about that for a minute. But he had 3 years of starting experience, and you saw him get his hands on a lot of balls. I want to say he had 7 or 8 picks in his career. He had a bunch of, I think he was maybe the pass defense leader in 2018. Check me if I'm wrong, but I remember he had a bunch. So he's a playmaker, and again, not a super big guy. I wouldn't say he's freakishly athletic or anything like that, but good experience. It seems like he has pretty good technique, and there's an opportunity there, right? I mean, I think there's a job there with the loss of Fuller and just a lack of depth in general. So, I've heard good things about him. I have a guy at the Oregon program who says good things about him and Javon Holland and some of the other guys, Brady Brees, who came out this year. It felt like he may have gone higher had he played last season and kept adding to his numbers.
You know what? Going off of the Bears draft last year, what were your thoughts on Vildor, since he's someone who may get to snatch up that job opposite Jalen Johnson?
Kindle Vildor from Georgia Southern. Yeah, he the thing that was pretty amazing was how many NFL talents he faced at receiver. And, he went against Antonio Golden Gandy and a few other guys who, I'm trying to remember who he matched up with, but they had some pretty good games that last year. And they always stuck him on one of the best receivers. Yeah. And that was sort of an eye-opening. That gave me, a pretty good hope. And he's a feisty kid. It seems like he's competitive. He got beat some routes and some reps, but I'd have to kind of review my notes a little bit. It's been a minute since I watched him, but I remember coming out thinking, and he was down at the Senior Bowl and he was competitive down there. Where he struggled down there were in the one-on-one drills where, only the elite cover guys seem to really have, consistent success. It's tough. You're on an island, right? It's you against the guy. They can run anywhere. So that was, the one thing that stood out. But yeah, I'll be curious to see how he fits into the mix too.
And look, finishing it out on defense with Khyiris Tonga and Charles Snowden. What were your thoughts on those two players?
Yeah, Snowden's really interesting because he's this sort of, body-wise, he's a little bit like Leonard Floyd. Floyd was this sort of long, spindly, kind of wiry guy for that size or whatever. And he has some intriguing athleticism and length. That's the thing that stands out. He's like, 6'6" basically, but lean. And so, I've kind of struggled with, there was another kid who went back to school, Coin Dang from Cal, who was the same sort of guy where you thought, what is he going to be exactly in the NFL? And I think that I suspect there was a little bit of that going on in the meeting rooms as teams discuss these prospects. Like, he's got some burst. He had a 3-sack game last year. Snowden, I'm talking about. You know, he's obviously got the length. I want to say there was an injury at the end of the year too. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe he got hurt and missed a little bit of time. But sort of one of those fascinating athletic specimens you don't see come around very often, that those dimensions. And maybe they found a sleeper here. You know, maybe this is someone that they can kind of develop a little bit. Tonga, I mean, you know, he was one of those guys who seemed like he got a lot of penetration, but didn't always make sacks or TFLs. So, you know, there were a couple matchups where I felt like he got held in check pretty well. And I almost wonder if he's not better as kind of a hold the point kind of guy, you know, and be able to sort of two gap a little bit. I mean, he's a big, thick, wide guy. Like, he's not very tall. You know, the arm length is really short, but, you know, he's built like a square almost. And so, yeah, it's unbelievable watching.
Just take on two guys. Just take on two guys.
And like, he's got a little bit of burst. Like, he's not, you know, I wouldn't say anything's. I know they used him on special teams too. He blocked a 1 or 2 field goals in college, and he actually ran for a touchdown too. So you might see like a goal line full house backfield where he's at fullback, or, you know, little Fridge Perry kind of thing going on.
Fridge Perry.
Yes. Back then, I mean, he would have been even bigger than the Fridge, which is amazing to think about. Yeah.
Of course, when you think about it. So listen, how well did the Bears do overall in this draft? How did you grade it out, Eric?
I think they were my favorite team. I would shock me. I don't know that I would have, you know, like, if you told me a week before the draft that they were going to have my highest graded draft, I would have been shocked. I would have said, okay, that means they went up and got one of the quarterbacks. What did they give up? You know, but I didn't think the cost. You tell me what you think. I mean, I kept looking at what they paid, and everybody said, ooh, that's a steep cost. Look what the Niners paid. Going from 12 to 3 versus what the Bears paid. I think it was a perfectly reasonable price.
I love it. I'll tell you this. I was fearful, and I understand why people would say do it, giving up 3 number ones for Russell Wilson, just because that's just a lot of draft capital, but it's Russell Wilson. Yep. And thinking about giving up 2 number ones for one of these quarterbacks, I was leery, but I would have done it. You swapped your first round, and you only gave up 1 number 1 pick. I love it. I think it was, and of course you have the 4th and the 5th, but still, like, you held on to your 2nd round pick, and you ended up getting Tevin Jenkins, who I thought in my mock drafts that anybody asked me, I had Tevin Jenkins going to the Bears at number 20. So, and I mean, I know most people did. I'm not saying it like, oh, I'm some astute draft guy, but that was the person that I always would say, Tevin Jenkins, Tevin Jenkins, Tevin Jenkins. So no, I love what they gave up. I love the patience that Ryan Pace showed, because you thought Ryan Pace would get taken, you thought, in this situation, because people knew he was thirsty, and you thought, you know, someone was going to be like, he's going to jump up high and we're going to get him. So no, I loved it. I mean, I was sitting there talking to Tony Gill where we were texting, because we were about to we had to do under center a reaction for it. And I was like, I said, you know what, I'm about to put my jacket on, because I think the Bears are about to trade up. And literally 40 seconds later, the Giants symbol changes to the Bears, and I'm like, oh, I thought it was like the next pick, not this pick. So I screamed. It was joyous to say the least. So no, Eric, I don't think they gave up a lot.
No, I don't either. And the craziest part is that, you know, Dave Gettleman, the Giants GM, you know, they asked him a week before the draft. He does his press conference. Hey, Dave, you've never traded down in a draft before. And I refuse to be fleeced. You know, like he was, you know, it's not going to happen, you know. So basically he just came out and was like, yeah, I'm not going to get taken on a deal, but I mean, I think the value is reasonable. I mean, I get it. And if Fields hits, who cares? They made the right call.
Listen, shout out to Dallas and the Eagles for getting Devontae Smith so that trade can basically take place. I'm with you. Yeah. I'm with you all the way. So listen, I want you to say your division grades for everyone in the division, but also overall in the NFL, who got your worst grade?
It's a good question. I can't remember off the top of my head. It might have been either the Texans and the Seahawks, those two, because they had the fewest picks. You know, and okay, they didn't hit grand slams every single one of them. So I think by virtue of that, I think they were my lowest. I was particularly harsh on somebody that I got a call from somebody. Who was it? I forget. I'm trying to remember, but yeah. Oh, my Colts buddy called me and he was like, "Oh, you didn't like our draft, huh?" And I had to answer. I had to dodge that one a little bit and tap dance. And well, you see, I've been trying to grade tougher this year. Just pulling excuses. It's like my wife. Where were you? Where you been? Well, you see, honey.
Got distracted. I went over there.
Yeah, exactly. I forgot what I was doing up there. And, oh, we were cleaning? No doubt. Wow. Right. But yeah, division grades. I like the Vikings approach. I mean, I think most of their picks made sense. Like Christian Darrisaw, getting him on the trade down. But if you're in their spot and you're able, probably easier than the Bears, to go up and get Fields, why are you not doing it? And then you're picking Kellen Mond at 66 or whatever. That was the only thing that confused me. Did they not love Fields? It seemed like they made kind of a half-hearted trade attempt to get up there, and the Giants said, no, we'll take the Bears offer. So that was the only thing that kept me back from really kind of loving it. I love the Lions choices, a lot of like B-plus type picks, Sewell, Onwuzurike, Aleem McNeil, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I could start for them as a rookie. I mean, like to get that kind of value at a need position in round 4 was great. So, Brad Holmes, new GM there, I thought did a terrific job. One of my favorite sort of top to bottom team grades. The Packers I didn't like. I know I'm not alone in that feeling. I like some of their day 3 choices pretty well, but I'm sorry. I never saw Eric Stokes as a first-round pick. Great athlete, elite athlete. Maybe he taps into that talent. I certainly had some questions about the approach of the draft and how they went about sort of putting it together, but maybe it was just all that negativity around Aaron Rodgers that got me dragged me down with it. It's possible.
It happens.
It happens. So that may have been it.
Look. First, one thing, and it's funny, the running gag that I have going is with Kellen Mond. Again, I don't know what just came out of my mouth because I don't speak third-round quarterback any longer. Especially when he was one of the guys that we may have had to get him, David.
Exactly.
Trash. I don't speak. I don't even. Again, I don't know what just came out of my mouth, Eric, because I don't speak third-round great quarterback.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, isn't that a nice luxury to have all of a sudden? Like, you don't have to worry about like the second or third tier guys that you're going to have to settle for and all that. What a luxury it is to actually, again, without him ever taking a snap in the NFL, the feeling is pretty good around Fields. I think they did a good thing.
So last one that I have for you.
Yeah.
You're way too early draft. The Bears are going to probably still, you don't know what's going to happen to Allen Robinson next season. Right. And you still probably have to go out and put more talent in the cornerback position. So who are the guys that maybe are the back end first rounders or second rounders that you may have on right now that are receivers or cornerbacks that the Bears should be looking at next year?
Are you asking me a 2022 draft class question? This is amazing. This will be the only one that I get for 6 months probably. The corner class looks, again, this is on the surface early on. I mean, could be a really good group. I mean, Derek Stingley, these are first round picks, so hard to, sort of picture them going to the Bears, obviously, with that one. But Derek Stingley Jr. from LSU could be a superstar. Khyiris Tonga from Florida, who's actually Matt Elam's cousin or nephew, I forget. And Andrew Booth Jr. from Clemson are 3 that I think are tremendous players and are going to be really good. So those are the top guys. I haven't had enough time to really go through and look at the second and third tier or whatever, but wide receivers should look good again. I mean, like the 2 Ohio State kids, Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, I think are going to be really nice. And, the kid that I love is Treylon Burks at Arkansas, 6'3", 232, took handoffs in the backfield sometimes, threw passes occasionally, has some return ability and caught probably 60% of their balls last year. Just felt like he was targeted on every single play. So, those are a few guys to kind of whet your appetite. Burks is one that I don't know. Maybe I'm getting a little too excited about him, but I really like the kid.
You know what? And this guy's isn't coming out next year, but by any chance, have you seen any? And I might get this name wrong because I've only seen him play in the red and white game. Jai Hall. Have you seen any of Jai Hall, the receiver for Alabama?
No.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him. Yeah, no.
Ooh,
I mean,
Eric, you got to get your eyes on this one.
Okay, I'm already backed up with John Mechie the third, and I got, you know what I mean. Like we got to get those other. Isn't it just wild though? Like that has become a factory for wide receivers. I mean, just from Cooper to Julio to Mari and all the four guys.
Jerry Judy, all these guys that just came out. Like, dude, you never would have thought. I can remember Julio being down there, and I actually thought Julio could have played even better when he was at Alabama. I thought he was a stud, but I thought he could have been an even better player compared to the pro player that he has. But they're basically, the crazy thing is they basically come from Julio. Like he started that trend, and when you see what they've done in the last 2 drafts at Alabama, it's crazy. Roll Tide. It's crazy.
Absolutely. It's just one after another, man. And they're all talented. They all went in the first round. It just doesn't make sense. It's crazy.
Not at all. Not at all. Listen, I always appreciate it. You have a terrific day, Eric. And make sure everybody you follow him at Eric_Edholm. This man knows his draft. All right. And if you're a football guy like me, you love some draft. It's just good food to eat. But Eric, always appreciate it. I will talk to you. I'm not waiting till next draft. We're going to do a half a year draft thing.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to come back to you so we can find out. Then I want my second round cornerback and/or receiver at that point. So about the next 5 or 6 months, we got to link back up to go over the upcoming draft. But I want you early. I don't want to wait like everybody else. All right,
that should be ample time. I'll start working on my second round corners and receivers next year. I'll be ready when you ask me.
All right, Eric. Have a good one.
All right, buddy.